Hello everyone. So let us discuss today on the topic of molecular weight of polymers. So far we had dealt with different types of polymerization process. So to a very important property of the polymer is its molecular weight. Now why I am saying that molecular weight is a very important property, that is because many of the properties that we come across in the polymers are arising as a result of the variation in the value of the molecular weights, and that is why study of molecular weights of polymers is a very important. And because it affects its solubility, it affects its the melting point, its solubility, its viscosity, its moldability. All those properties are very much affected by the molecular weight of polymers. Now, so far you have learned about molecular weights. Now, what is the difference when it comes to molecular weight of polymers? So, whenever you talk about molecular weight of any compound, it's a singular value. Okay, so if you talk about molecular weight of methane molecule or ethane molecule or propane molecule, it has a single value that you can easily calculate. But when it comes to polymer, usually we have a polymer chain of different length. Okay, so because we have polymers of different length, so uh, the atoms present in each of the chain of the polymer would be different. So if you sum up the atoms and multiply them with their corresponding atomic weights, you get a molecular weight value which would be different because each polymer chain is having different length. Okay, so that is why when it comes to molecular weight of polymers, you do not have a singular value as you can see in the case of simple compounds. Okay, so that is one of the basic difference that you see when we talk about molecular weight of polymers. Okay, now polymer samples always contain molecules of different sizes and thus never have a fixed molecular weight. So that is what I just now said. Now, when it comes to the value, like we know we can calculate the molecular weight of different compounds. So polymers also, when we calculate their molecular weight, we have certain values, and we say that that is the optimum value at which we say that that is a polymer. Because suppose we talk about uh, uh, a polymer of ethene molecule. Okay, so when ethene polymerized, so when two molecules of ethene polymer, it forms a dimer. When three molecules of ethene polymerize, it forms a trimer. Four tetramer, five pentamer. Okay, so it gives rise to a oligomer. So when do we say that that particular joining together or that lengthening of the chain has reached an optimum value where we can say that polymer to be a polymer? Okay, so how can we define an optimum molecular weight of a polymer? Okay, when we say that it's a low molecular weight polymer, when we can say it is a very high molecular weight polymer. So that question is not very simple to answer. Why? Because for every polymer, the optimum weight or optimum molecular weight value at which we say that it is a polymer will vary. For example, for polyethylene, the molecular weight value might be a low molecular weight, but when it comes to polyamide, of that same value would be an optimum molecular weight. Okay, to understand that, let me take you to the next slide. So here, as you can see, this is the value of the molecular weight for polyamide, 15,000 and 20,000. It's an optimum value at which optimum value for the polyamide to function as a polymer. However, in case of the vinyl polymer, the value is pretty high. Okay, and still it is a very low molecular weight polymer. Okay, that is because for every different type of polymer you have different optimum range for it to be considered as a polymer. So that is why it is a very difficult question to answer, which is the optimum value at which we can say that, okay, that is the optimum molecular weight for a particular polymer. Usually, the molecular weight of the polymers may vary from few thousand to up to millions, okay, with optimum value depending upon the chemical structure and application. So, the value which could be said to be an optimum value for a particular polymer will depend upon the chemical structure of the monomer, as well as it depends upon the application of that particular polymer. Okay, and sometimes polymers are used in their low molecular weight condition or as oligomers because it helps in facilitating the initial processing for making different commodities using polymers. So sometimes we do intentionally make low molecular weight oligomers for the application point of view. Okay, so this is a brief overview about what is the molecular weight of polymer. So I hope you have a brief now idea that how molecular weight of polymer is different from the molecular weight you might have come across for various compounds. Okay. Now here, important terms that you must need to understand is the term called monodisperse and polydisperse. Okay, so when we say that a polymer is a monodisperse polymer, when we have all the molecules in that polymer sample having a same molecular weight, that means it's like a simple organic compound having a single value of molecular weight. In the same way, if you have a polymer sample in which all the polymer chain is having a uniform length and same molecular weight, we say that as a monodisperse polymer. And usually monodisperse polymer are can be found in nature. Okay, many of the natural polymers are monodisperse in their nature, but whenever we synthesize, we usually get a polydisperse sample. So now you can easily understand what do you mean by polydisperse. So whenever the polymer sample is having a kind of low having many molecular weights or having various polymer chain length, then it leads to a sample where we have different molecular weights. Okay, so such a polymer sample would be called as a polydisperse polymer sample. Okay, so now the mechanical properties influenced by the molecular weight. So this I told in the first sentence itself, that many of the properties of the polymer is very much dependent upon its molecular weight. So whenever the molecular weights are pretty low, they have very poor mechanical properties. However, as you increase the molecular weight of the polymer, they become tough, and so accordingly they can be used for various purposes. Okay, so we require molecular weights at lower value as well as higher values. It all depends upon the application for which you are using your polymer sample. Now, the optimum molecular weight for a vinyl is pretty high, and the optimum molecular weight for a polyamide is pretty low. Now, why there is a difference when it comes to polyamide and vinyl polymer? That is because in polyamide, we have, because of this polar functional group and hydrogen bonding, we have intermolecular interaction between the different chains in the polymer that leads to good association between the polymer chains, and as a result, they reach to an optimum value, yeah, when it comes to polyamides. However, when we talk about a vinyl polymer, this kind of strong intermolecular interaction between the polymer chain is lower, and that's why the value at which we say that we have a good vinyl polymer is pretty high. Okay, so this optimum value keeps changing depending upon what type of polymer we have. Now, when it comes to determination of molecular weights, okay, in the next uh, coming slide, I'll be talking about the different types of molecular weights, like the formulas that we use to calculate the molecular weight, that I'll be discussing. But before that, an introduction about what are the method we use to determine the molecular weights in polymers. So there is some absolute methods, there is a kind of relative methods, and then we have the kind of fractionation method. Okay, so absolute methods means sometimes we would be able to get some uh, absolute values for the molecular weights. So for that we use certain techniques like mass spectrometry. We use colligative properties like freezing point, boiling point, osmotic pressure to calculate the absolute mass. Then we can use N-group analysis. This is we know that whenever a polymerization happens, it has a N group. So if suppose the N groups, we can easily identify using certain methods like titration. So if you have an N group like COH, that is an acidic group, we can easily determine it by titration, how many acidic groups are present. So that is a kind of N group analysis. Then we have another called light scattering. This is possible because usually polymer solutions are colloid, so they show Tyndall effect, and that is why this particular light scattering methods we can use for determining the molecular weight. Then also ultra centrifugation. Okay, so all these techniques, though we don't have to study in detail about these techniques, can be used to determine the absolute mass of the polymer sample. Then we have certain relative methods like viscosity. It's kind of a relative method because here we kind of relatively measure the uh, viscosity molecular weight, and the molecular weight that we determine here, that is using viscosity, solution viscosity, is kind of more of a relative value. Then another technique is fractionation method. So here actually we use a J permeation chromatography to separate the various fractions in a polymer sample and thereby analyze the molecular weight of the polymer. So these are the various techniques that we use in order to determine the molecular weight of polymers. So this you must keep in mind, though we are not going to deal into details of these techniques, but you will come across when you take up in MSc more details about these techniques. Okay, so in the next video I'll talk about the different formulas that we use in order to calculate the molecular weight of the polymers. Thank you.